Heavenly shades of night are falling. It's twilight time. Out of the mist your voice is calling. It's twilight time. As purple-colored curtains mark the end of day, together at last at twilight time. I was really big into the Platters when I was like 10.
So we're going to be talking about the Twilight books today.
Yeah.
Yes. No, but they reference that song like 15 times in the book or something like that, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a reminder that Thomas is very similar to Stephen King.
I grew up in the 50s.
In Maine.
In Maine.
I was talking to my coworker about this, and have you guys ever been to Maine?
No.
Do you think that Stephen King made it up?
Maine?
Do you think Maine is real?
I think that there is a state that is mostly nothing that exists that is called Maine.
And he's like, there's nothing in there. I can just set an entire universe.
The only thing that exists in Maine is crab and lobster.
I'm going to say crack.
Well, yeah, that's what the crabs eat, is crack.
Oh, I see.
Welcome back to Read Weens, episode 7, I think.
Yeah, 7.
7. We're talking about Stephen King and his world-renowned novel, Hearts in Atlantis.
It is a anthology-style book. There are 4...
The longest story is not the title one.
Nope. Yeah, it's an anthology series. There are 4 stories that are connected to each other.
All through pretty much Vietnam, mostly.
Pretty much through Vietnam, yeah. Yeah.
But before that, did you guys read anything else this month?
Do you guys know how to read?
Yeah, I read the first Invincible trade paperback. I read Stumptown, or maybe that was last month. I read the first Darth Vader trade paperback of the Gillen run, which was the 2015 run. I started reading the Thrawn comic, because I have Marvel Unlimited on my phone for now, because the Thrawn comic's like $200 right now. Yeah, I've been reading a lot of comics this month, because I haven't had a lot of time to read, because I've been trying to get through this book. But yeah, I've been trying to read as much as I can.
Yeah, I basically only read this.
Classic.
I read this and like 2 to 3 new chapters of One Piece that have come out this month.
Oh, fuck, I didn't read the newest chapter.
Oh, dude, you're missing out. They dropped some shit in this one. But I'm not going to get into it here, obviously. But, new chapter tomorrow.
But yeah, we can just jump into Hearts and Atlantis then.
Yeah.
Classic book, 10 out of 10. Thanks for watching.
Yep, basically.
Yeah, I think Stephen King looked back at his career and found everything, every writing technique that worked for him, and did it in this book, but better.
I have no frame of reference. This is the first bit of Stephen King
I've read a decent handful of Stephen King.
This is the first Stephen King book I have finished. I have tried to get into them. I just haven't enjoyed some of his writing styles. There are some stories in this that I really do not like the writing style of.
Yeah.
Specifically the third story. I hated that story.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't necessarily hate the idea of it. It was just 50 pages of garbage.
It was the sloggiest part of the book.
Stephen King's writing style is very much focusing on a small fucked up town, and he'll basically dive and give you a couple pages worth of backstory for every single one of its fucking residents, even if
the character doesn't show up again in the book.
Or at all in the first place. They might even only be mentioned through anecdote of a story.
Yeah.
And I think that this works really well in some of his books. I think that works really well in it, because that book is very much about the town of Derry and the trauma and history in that town. Whereas with this story, or these stories, I wasn't really feeling the same way. In fact, I was feeling quite the opposite. I was sitting on my couch today, speed reading this book, trying to get it finished. I'm going this is just 20 pages of fucking horse shit that I don't care about. I just don't care. So the first story
Low Men in Yellow Coats
is like the only. It's the best one by far.
I hard disagree, actually.
Okay, well, he hard disagrees. I think it's the best one by far, and I think it's a piece of shit still.
I don't. Okay, I obviously we've already. I don't think this book's terrible. I just think
this book has
double the length it should be.
I think that this book is definitely tired Stephen King. He is. All of his tricks are very familiar at this point, and he's basically just kind of regurgitating his own cliches into this book.
Like, I don't think it was the worst story. I think there are some parts that are interesting, but there's just like a lot of this one did a lot of nothing.
Let me see if I can find my favorite quote.
Oh, is it about the arm?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the basic premise for this is it centers around a group of elementary school kids, and it's the summer in Connecticut, and they're just kind of being kids when all of a sudden Bobby, the main character, basically the entire book, gets a new upstairs neighbor named Ted Brodigan. And immediately Ted and Bobby are kind of buddies. They both like reading. His mom really doesn't like him. And then... And things kind of spiral out of control. Ted is revealed to be part of the Dark Tower series. Kind of.
He's a breaker.
Yeah. For the first, handful of chapters you're reading, it's heavily implied that he's going to be a molester man.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of like the subversion. He's not actually. He's just an alien from another world on the run from cosmic cops who work for the Crimson King.
Yeah.
And it's just,
which I know nothing about the Dark Tower.
I know nothing about the Dark Tower either.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same. I was
sweet.
just
which is funny because when a lot of the stuff was hitting the fan, during the last 100-ish pages of the story, I'm like, this is probably the most engaging part of this book so far.
I don't know if I agree.
Yeah, I don't. I really don't.
I find
the last half of this.
I find the Low Men in Yellow Coats to be kind of lame villains. They're obviously the way they're described is pretty just they're wacky, they're tall, slender men in yellow coats, and they have a big purple car that sometimes has tentacles and gives us presents that it's alive.
Yeah,
it's just none of this is interesting, and the climax basically amounts to them just fucking touching Bobby with their claw-like fingers and basically triggering his dark winkle, and he's like, I don't like this, and then he's like, let me go, and then Ted's like, yeah, I'll go, just leave the kid alone, take me, and I don't know, it just didn't feel. It felt like most of the impact from the ending was more emotional than it was actually on
anything related to the characters. I don't know, I somehow got invested. I was just kind of it kind of sucks. It's interesting. Weird stuff was happening that I wasn't really expecting all too much, which is kind of a good and a bad, because there's some weird build-up of oh, Ted's not what he seems he is, and then he's a fucking alien, and I'm just wait, what?
See, I feel like I had caught on to that partway through the book. I didn't necessarily get that it was going to be Dark Tower stuff when he mentioned that.
I knew it was Dark Tower related, kind of in the back of my head, because my old assistant manager who recommended this book and a couple of other books, Stephen King related, is this one kind of relates to the Dark Tower, sort of. I'm like, oh, cool. And kind of just tucked that nugget in my back pocket and forgot it was there.
Yeah.
London, you said you had a quote that you really liked?
Bobby found himself looking at Willie's cocked fist. Sometimes Bobby woke up in the morning with his Peter just as hard as a rock, standing straight up like a moon rocket or something. As he went into the bathroom to pee, it would soften and wilt. Willie's cocked arm was wilting like that now, the fist at the end of it relaxing back into fingers, and the comparison made Bobby want to smile. Stephen King can't stop talking about peepees.
No.
He really can't.
He really likes talking about peepees, loves fat shaming.
Really loves fat shaming.
He will also
Loves racial
Yeah, he
slurs.
loves writing really racist characters who say some of the foulest shit in like every single one of his fucking novels. To the
Like
point where it's like,
they use the N word a few times in the first 2 stories, and then they
Yeah.
use the G word like a shit ton in the last
Yeah.
stories.
so it's just like, but yeah, just like, so basically, Bobby friends the upstairs neighbor who's an alien. He gets a job reading them newspapers and looking out for men in coats. Meanwhile, he's struggling at home because his mom's very distant. She's dealing with a lot of shit and basically kind of venting a lot of her frustrations out on her son and just like projecting a lot onto him.
So the whole climax with his mom, I really liked that like whole like argument. Even though like it was built on a lot of misconceptions, I really liked that.
Yeah, I probably thought that scene was probably the best scene from this story.
Yeah, just because it was a lot of like just emotions colliding into each other and like the fuck.
It felt more so that had been the point the book had been building to, as opposed to the kind of like showdown with the yellow men and coats.
It was kind of whatever. Yeah, no, like that was like that whole like scene when his mom came back from the conference was like very much like, okay, this was what the story was leading to all along, because his mom is like a broken, tattered human at that point from being taken advantage of in a lot of insinuated ways at the conference. Yeah. And then coming home to see like a potentially awkward situation and her just like not wanting to accept reality or listen to people because she, was being taken advantage of and couldn't really think right.
Yeah, basically, so she walks in after Carol, who is Bobby's little girlfriend. She gets beat up by some of the neighborhood kids, one of which gets his own little story later on.
Yeah.
And basically, so Bobby, like, takes her to get her, like, shoulder relocated by Ted. And while this is going on, basically the mom walks in and thinks that Ted is, like, in the middle of basically, like, covering up an assault on Carol, which then she starts freaking out and she basically thinks that he's been
molesting her
and making Bobby, bringing him into this lifestyle of basically training him up to be like that.
Yeah.
And basically everyone is like, no, that's not what happened. And obviously she had just gotten out of the very traumatic experience she had gotten back from.
Mm-hmm.
She's just like, no, I'm not going to listen to it. And
they're like, no, I know what's right. I need to take control of something, otherwise I'm going to lose it.
Yeah. And I like, because it very easily could have gone on Bobby's side where he wants to emotionally blow up against her.
Yeah.
Be like, fuck you. But the whole time Ted is like, no.
And there were parts of it where Bobby had his flare-ups.
Oh, yeah.
Just because his mom was she threw him against the wall.
I don't think his mom is any less of a terrible person.
No.
I still think I don't know, borderline terrible mother. Obviously she cares and she's putting it, but they get into that whole philosophy that I don't know if I particularly agree with, where it's she loves you, she just doesn't like you, Bobby.
Yeah.
She hates me. Yes, but she also loves you. Shut the fuck up, Ted.
Yeah, it's I don't necessarily
and
that stuff.
And the whole the entirety of Bobby and his mom's relationship was incredibly rocky. And his mom was just kind of the worst.
Yeah. I wish we could have gotten some justification, or not some justification, but some insight into why she felt the way she did before the stuff that obviously happens at the current point in the timeline. Why is she so fucking just awful?
Yeah.
Or remembers just slanders his father, even though it seems most of the stuff that she says about him is just lies that she tells to herself.
Yeah, and Bobby finds out about his father was actually he had his issues, but he was a relatively decent person, it seemed.
Yeah, so I think I would have liked a little more insight into that specific dynamic.
But no, we have to talk about an 11-year-old's genitals and aliens.
Yeah, I don't. The tie-in with the Dark Tower, I think, is unneeded and doesn't add anything and takes away from the emotional impact of the ending for me. And I do not think that this should have been 350 pages.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
I think it could have been like 150. I think a lot of it is just like padding and not very good padding. I don't really like the characterization of anyone except maybe Ted. And I just think Ted is a more interesting character when you think about him as like somebody struggling with like mental illness or like dementia or like things that it thinks it might be before he finds out that he's an alien. I think him being an alien tied to the Dark Tower is just like
kind of a cop-out.
Really boring.
I see that.
Yeah.
Because I definitely think, like, before, like, they reveal all that stuff, like, oh, he's just an old man, he needs help reading the paper, and he's making ludicrous bets on fights. You know?
And I think because later on, the fifth story, the epilogue, jumps back to Bobby Garfield. I think remembering somebody for their faults and their weaknesses as well as their strengths is a lot more interesting than just being like, yeah, the moon alien brought me over here, and it's just like...
Yeah.
I think that having these connect in a way to Ted just ruins it. Like, I think the epilogue's bad. I think the first story's good if it wasn't so long. And then the rest just feel so disconnected from it.
Yeah.
Besides having, like, Carol. Carol's in the second one.
Through one.
Yeah.
She gets mentioned
Which,
in all of
like, I don't, like... Carol was just kind of there to be passed around.
I don't
every
know.
single character,
Like,
feels like.
I guess do we have anything else to say about the first story, I guess?
Not particularly. Like, it's fine. Like I said, like, there's some, like, the wackier parts of the story that tie into the Dark Tower are, like, funny and interesting to me because I'm like, well, okay, that's crazy. Sure, I'm interested, I guess. We'll see where it goes. And then kind of disappointed where it doesn't really go anywhere. That's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, it definitely feels especially jarring considering like the later events of like the other shorts, because like most of them don't dip into the supernatural at all.
No.
And if they do, it's very light.
Yeah.
So it's just like
Yeah, like the later stories are mainly on like mental illness and PTSD and like
Which
struggles.
is like if you didn't, it would tie in a lot more thematically if he wasn't part of the Dark Tower and he was struggling with like dementia or PTSD or things like that. Like, what are you doing?
Okay, so moving on to the second story, the titular Hearts in Atlantis. Is the second longest one of like 200-ish 200-ish pages, something like that.
I actually really like the story.
I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was interesting. So it's
like there are parts that are dumb and that I don't like, and I do not know why Stephen King insists upon having like characters be minors still. Like, what the fuck? Like, why didn't you set Carol Gerber to be 1 year older? But it's like, no,
she was a minor. She was mature, and so he fucked. And I'm like, what the fuck?
So the story is set in college at the University of Maine. Pete Riley is a gambling addict in a game called Hearts, where basically he and everyone else on his dorm room floor are like addicted to it. And like most everyone is either going to flunk or did flunk or just kind of left of their own accord because they're kind of just wasting time. And it kind of it like ties into timeline wise, Vietnam War is going on. That's a big through line for the rest of the book.
Yeah, it's kind of like the fire beneath his feet because
it's like
he knows if he doesn't get his shit together over the course of the story, he's like they have lines where it's like, well, get your shit together in school or you're going to the jungle next year.
Oh yeah, you're gonna be fighting in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So kind of take your choice, and it's kind of Pete Riley's struggle with like just gambling addiction. He's like multiple times in the story, he's like, I can't go into there. I know what's going to happen and when I'm going to go in there.
Walks in.
And then he goes, God damn it, it's already 1 a.m. and here I am. I have done nothing. Which kind of hits really hard for someone who struggles with procrastination. You're just like, okay, I got to get these things done. The day is gone. You know, that hit hard.
You guys were reading this 2 days before you were supposed to be done with it. You're like, huh.
Yeah, I didn't start this book till Monday.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. This guy's struggling with not reading too. Huh. Well, look at that.
Yeah. And there are a bunch of other characters. Fucking Ronnie, good old Ronnie. He's kind of
Good old Ron.
good old Ronnie. He's a good old boy, all right.
There's
There's
Is that his roommate's name?
no, Nate.
I was like, who the fuck is Will?
Then there's
Skip.
there's Skip. There's Stoke.
Stoke Jones.
Stoke
Jones
Jones.
or something like that.
Yeah. And Carol's in the story.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of about like university life and just navigating just everything
And the pipeline you go through when you get education on just in general, leaning more left and finding out more about like, hey, maybe this war sucks. Maybe it's not a great thing.
Yeah.
Because Pete Riley says in like the third page or something
that he's
like conservative and he's like pro-war, and by the end of it he has a peace sign on his jacket and he's like, yeah, and he talks about like how he was in like fights and he's gotten arrested for protesting and stuff.
And this is like transition to like being like a college activist and like protesting the war. And like not wanting to get like his like face out there because his mom would not like the fact that he's protesting the war. So I think this is definitely better than Low Men in Yellow Coats by a good margin, I would say.
Thomas hated this one though.
I didn't really get much from it. Like I acknowledge.
I got more from it than the first. I'll say that one.
Yeah,
I would probably agree.
And
I just found the first to be like, I don't know, maybe more engaging because I was like, it was the first one I was reading and it had some supernatural elements.
Lord of the Flies. I've read Lord of the Flies.
I have read.
Have you seen the movie?
Flies.
Like the old?
We watched. No, I didn't watch the 80s one. I've seen the like old black and white one though.
I haven't seen the old black and white one. I saw the one in color, and I specifically remember that one because the scene where, spoilers for Lord of the Flies, I guess, the scene where Piggy dies is so hilariously fake and bad. Like, it's just a really bad, just like smash cut when the rock hits Piggy's head to like a styrofoam head. The scene is like forever ingrained in my head as just like, so goofy and terrible looking. Like, there's like a legitimate like quarter second of just like rock hit, change scene to the rock hitting like a styrofoam thing. It hilarious.
I'm familiar with the type of effect.
Yeah,
London's going to be seeing a lot of that in Dawn of the Dead here.
Oh,
Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead.
I think the emotional like core of this is just generally a lot stronger and generally more consistent.
I agree.
Save for a few things, mainly like the whole like why is Carol a minor thing. You're gonna be robbed in the cradle. I'm like,
Which
fuck?
is really annoying because I actually like a lot of the writing for Carol in this story specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's pretty well fleshed out, and I think she's a pretty interesting character, and like the biggest voice of reason in the early half of this story.
Mm-hmm.
While like Pete Riley has a really strong internal monologue in like the second half, and it's just like why is she minor? Why is this a thing? What's going on? And there's like no reason for it. So the Demon King looks like this.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe he just did the math at the year.
Why did he just make them 12 in 1960 then?
Because that wouldn't have gotten the accurate feeling of an 11-year-old son.
But also, she was 11 in 60, and then she hadn't quite turned 18 yet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, This is literally, you could have just had her, like, 4 months, like,
Yeah.
she could have been born the same year.
No, the king has spoken.
Yep.
You're
It is set in paper.
Yep.
If you don't like it, get a pen and scratch.
But yeah,
I agree.
This story, and then it ends with him being like, "Yeah, I never touched hearts again.
Yep.
Yeah.
I never saw Carol again.
Yeah.
I sometimes see like Stoke Jones on the TV because he became like a famous activist.
Mm-hmm.
I like the epilogue of this a lot more than the epilogue of the first one as well.
Yeah, well, he did play Hearts. He taught his kids it, and it was just kind of like a fun little
But he didn't
summer
play it in
thing.
college. He
Yeah.
never touched it in college.
Yeah, he was able to kind of turn his life around after, like, repeatedly failing over and over again. But, solid part. Probably, I was the most engaged throughout the entirety of this story. There were definitely, like, low points in Low Men in Yellow Coats where I'm just like, I don't care about a lot of this. But this one I felt like the points where, like, I wasn't engaged was pretty minimal, I'd say. I like all the gags when they were working in the cafeteria, like, dish line. Like, people would just, like, put random shit in the bowls, just, like, prank the workers. I'm like, pretty funny. Pretty good.
What's that thing that they said? Like, eat mean beans?
Yeah, eat more beans. Like, eat more main beans or something like that. Eat main beans something. They wanted them to eat more beans. I thought was pretty funny. What's the next story?
Blind Willie. This takes place 14 years later in 1983. About a Vietnam veteran, and we know him. It's Willie Sherman, who is one of the guys who beat up Carol Gerber in the first story. But he felt bad about it.
He was the one that took a bat to an 11-year-old.
No, he was the one that held her.
Okay.
Harry Doolin was the one that took the bat, and that's the one that Bobby beat the shit out of.
Yeah.
That was a good part.
That was very good.
And then he's like, I don't know. I didn't do it.
Yeah, I really like
And
that.
the mom's like, he's been here.
He's like, he's been here. It's like, can you avoid that kid till we leave? He's like, yeah. I'm like, good. I'm like, okay, cool. This one was kind of a blur because I really didn't care about anything going on in this one.
Blind Willie. He was in Vietnam, and he's got, like, this temporary blindness.
Yeah.
Yeah, from, like, the sun, pretty much. Because he got, like, hit by a flashbang. And so if he looks at the sun for too long, he, like, goes blind for a bit. So the story's about this guy who he's leading, like, a triple life. But
basically.
Really, he just has 2 fake jobs set up just so he can then go pretend to be blind.
And get a lot of money.
Veteran on the street. And he just gets like $3,000 a day or something.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why you would still make money if you weren't blind. And you would probably be making more because you wouldn't have to pay for 2 separate offices.
To look the other way.
So I just kind of forgot about that. I just forgot about the triple life part, and I just thought of it. But even then, it's just like, I just did not care for this one. I didn't get anything out of this one.
I got 0 out of it.
I really, really didn't like how it
You get
was
some
written.
context for the main character of the next one. Because he
Yeah.
talks about a little bit about Sully in this one and his heroic deed.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
It's very nothing. Like, it's kind of stupid. Kind of bad.
Yeah, I didn't really feel like it had any decent comments on, like, the state of, like, veterans after the war and, like, needing money, especially those who were actually, like, really affected and fucked up because of the shit that went on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. Maybe it was trying to make a counterpoint to that.
But yeah, I think it fails miserably on what it was trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think it was the worst written out of all 5. And I don't care about it, and I've mostly forgotten about all of it, even though I read it yesterday.
I also read it today, and I'm just like, Cop Man was angry because the
he
whole,
makes money.
He makes
and
money.
He knows he's not actually blind.
even though he like sort of kind of is blind-ish, and I'm just like, this is the weirdest.
And then he's like, I'm gonna get this guy killed. I'm like, why?
yeah, and he's like, oh, I can't
Why
get
not
him
just
killed.
stop doing this or go somewhere else?
Yeah, stupid, bad. Skipping, moving on to the next story.
Gave me fanatic flashbacks, and that's bad.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. Then we jump another 16 years to 1999. Why we're in Vietnam, and this one is about
Sully.
Yeah.
Yep.
Who is
Sully John.
I don't know if we mentioned him in the Low Men. Who he was the best friend trio of
Yeah.
Bobby, Carol,
and Sully
Sully John. Yeah.
Sully John.
I actually probably think this is the best story out of the four.
I enjoy this one
That
a
was
lot
decent.
more than a lot of the other ones, simply because it's shorter, and I really like the falling down sequence.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I like the I think that this one actually does have effective commentaries. In it.
I agree because it's so the story is Sully John just kind of meeting up with old war buddies.
Yeah, well, he's Diefenbecker or something like that.
Diefenbecker.
Who was his, sergeant, who was the commanding officer in Vietnam. He meets up with him because one of the other people died.
Yeah.
And he's at their funeral. And then he drives home, gets stuck in traffic, and he dies in a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
And then it cuts to that commanding officer, reading the paper the next morning and seeing that. And I don't know. There's constant flashbacks to Vietnam. They're talking about it. Ronnie shows up, and he's a fucking psychopath. And it's just they not only sent innocent people into Vietnam,
But
they murdered innocent people, but they also sent actual people that need to be in mental institutions, Ronnie, who goes crazy and murders an old woman,
and
who then
tortures her,
Sully John,
and plays with her corpse by dangling it around on his bayonet, and I'm just like, oh God! And he's still playing hearts even when he's fighting the war.
We gotta hunt the bitch.
We gotta hunt the bitch. Yeah, no, I think that there is some good commentary going on. I like the whole back and forth of old war buddies just sharing scars and seeing how they're stacking up and where they are and is this guy alive? Are they still around? No. Okay, what about this guy? It's very depressing in a good way. Yeah.
Yeah. And it also talks about Carol as well, who became
The Red Carol.
who literally killed people with a bomb.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't really her fault because they're literally they told them exactly where the bomb was.
Yeah.
Because it was supposed to go off before anyone was in there. They called them multiple times. So I'm like, oh, that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're well, we had gotten a bunch of bomb threats. I'm like,
And
it doesn't.
in the next story, we get some further insight that she may have actually tried to stop the bomb.
Yeah, because she has.
That was the impression I got. They
It was
mentioned that.
either that
Someone
she
has
tried
that
to-
impression
She tried
in
to
the story.
stop the bomb, or she freak accident.
Yeah.
Well, she also supposedly died in that fire
Yeah.
afterward.
Oh,
But she didn't.
Yeah.
I assume that's where the scar was from.
Yeah.
But yeah, this story has a decent amount to say, and it's done in 50 pages instead of 300. And it's told pretty effectively. I like Sully John's characterization in this one.
Yep.
I like the conversation he has with the commanding officer, where the commanding officer is like, we died in Vietnam. And he fucking says something like, I fucking hate our generation. We had the capability, we had the ability to change everything.
And we just
didn't.
Yeah. Which ties into parts in Atlantis. People just wanting to do the things they should, but just not. Granted, this is more on external factors than internal. But
And I really like Old Mama Son or whatever.
Yeah.
I like how she's constantly haunting him.
Mhm.
And then he's
she's just kind of there, too. She doesn't really say a
It's
whole
like a
lot.
comforting figure. When
Yeah.
he
well,
is
she doesn't
actually
say anything
Yeah.
until the very end. And then he has a vision of things falling from the sky, in Vietnam.
Mm.
And
He
people
sees-
getting wrecked.
He sees a woman that looks like Carol, and he's
Is
like,
it
Carol?
Carol?
And then she gets a fucking cell phone wedged into her
And then
skull.
some other guy who was on a motorcycle,
A fridge falls on him,
Yeah.
and he suddenly wakes up, and he's
Yeah.
like,
He
after
looks
he,
up and he
sees-
hears these grand piano. What the fuck? Hides under a car.
Finds a baseball mitt.
He finds Bobby's old baseball mitt,
Which
sniffs
is-
it, and then dies pretty much.
Yeah. Which that's one of the supernatural things because they say that like he had the baseball bat or mitt with him when he actually died.
Yeah.
When he gets back to Bobby.
Sisterhood of the Traveling Baseball Mitt.
All right.
Then the epilogue.
Heavenly Shades of Night Are Falling. It's after the Twilight Time song. Yeah, so it's called that, and basically Bobby
Shows up for Sully John's funeral, but also he's like, I know Carol's alive. Because Ted sent him the magic baseball glove
Yeah.
with a note.
Yep.
I was just like, okay.
and then Carol shows up. She's got like an alias she goes by now.
And she, like, adamantly refuses to acknowledge that she was Carol, but, like, sometimes when she's talking, like, the grammar lines up. It's like, oh, yeah, I used to be this way. I'm like, it's not consistent. Which is, like, kind of just, like, a weird nitpicky thing for me. It's like, you're, like, so adamantly, like, no, Carol is dead. She died in the house fire. I am, Denise?
Yeah, I think that's
Denise Schoonover.
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 But like she'll be like, oh yeah, we used to do this when we were kids, and like, consistency weird, but I'm like,
I mean,
thought
I
it was,
think
like,
it's fine. I
it's
think
fine,
she's also
it's-
just being like,
she's
I'm not-
talking
yeah.
to like Bobby. And
Yeah.
it's like
yeah,
obviously.
like,
he knows.
and I think what it's trying to go for is sweet, but I think thinking on it more as we talk, like the whole like Ted magic thing kind of like ruins a lot of like whatever magic was happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I like that he's like he has a committed relationship, but he still like wanted to see Carol because she was like an important part of his life.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily in a romantic way. He just needed to know.
Yeah.
But and I just don't think. And he's like, I came because of the baseball club. I'm like, why wouldn't you just come for your buddy's funeral? Like.
Yeah.
And then meet up. Like, there's no
Because
reason for this supernatural
He and
element.
Sully John broke up when they were 11. They went their separate ways after that summer.
After that,
Yeah, but you
yeah.
still like if we stop the podcast after episode 102, if you died, I'd still show up and piss on you.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah.
I'd go up to give my thoughts, and I just fart into the microphone.
But see, this is when we're in our 20s. We're
Yeah, but it's
adults.
like we're 11.
Yeah.
True.
We've probably known each other as long as they knew each other.
True.
Yeah, that's entirely possible.
But yeah, in general, just Joe, what the fuck? Why you do this to me? This was worse than Beastar. No, it wasn't.
No, because there are like things I can point to and say, okay, actually decent stuff and like enjoyable moments. There were no enjoyable moments in Beastars.
So what about the chicken? The chicken story. Yeah, so I guess we'll go down. Thomas, would you recommend this book?
No, I'd recommend pretty much. I'd say you could probably randomly pick a different Stephen King book, and you'd probably have a higher likely chance of picking something better than this. I think that this is probably one of his weaker collections. I like that. A positive that I will give it. I like that even though it is just like a couple novellas and short stories, that they all do tie into each other. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting it to be like completely random.
Yeah.
So I like that it had that through line through it.
I also like
I just wish it was a little more consistent. But yeah, I don't know. If you're a diehard Stephen King fan, probably read it. I don't think I'll ever read it again, though.
I am also going to pass on the recommendation. Kind of my idea going into this was like, oh, I want to read Stephen King, a collection of his short stories. That sounds like a good like sampler platter type deal to like get into it. And I'm just like, I see what we're going for, and I see how it might work. But this is a bad starting point for someone like me who has never read Stephen King. I do think the anthology worked out pretty well. I especially like how in the second book they're like, Carol is name dropped, but like you're not. At least I wasn't 100% sure it was the
Not
same
until
character.
a little further in. Yeah.
And they name drop her last name. Like, okay, Cool, interesting. Okay, this kind of works a little bit better because I was just told like it's a collection of short stories and there's a framing device around it. I'm like, okay, I know how the anthologies work. Yeah, I would say probably would have been a better idea to pick one of his more mainstream options to get more into Stephen King, but it was a fun little experiment that I will never return to this book for again.
I'm glad I own this.
I'm also glad I own this.
Probably gonna just keep it on the shelf and eventually donate it. Yeah, I would not recommend this book. I think that there are stories in it that are decent. I think the fourth story is decent. I think the second story is decent. And I think they can be read by themselves. So I guess if you wanted to read them, you could. But I don't think anything's necessarily... I like the second story, and I think the rest are bad to okay. And I guess I like the fourth story. But no, in general, I think this book's not good. Sorry, Stephen King. This was a miss for us. I know you listen to the podcast, and I'm very excited to hear our thoughts. But
well, I'm glad I'm the one that I guess no. Pierre liked B stars. I was gonna say I think this is the most like negative on a book we've gotten. Where we were like most of us were kind of like
it was
because at least like Pierre was kind of like the one like leading the crusade for B stars, however serious or not serious it was. All right. Speaking of crusade, what are we being led to next read, Mr. Thomas?
It's gonna be rough. The Bible.
S or P?
Shit or piss, huh?
I guess there's two of you. Joe, you get S or P?
P.
Uh-oh.
We're going to be reading Parasite.
That one right there? Or the manga?
The manga.
Oh, okay.
It is 8 volumes. It's like 64 chapters, I think, so it's not super long.
Oh.
Cool.
Are they like 40-page chapters, though? Or are they...
No, they're like 18, 19 page.
It'd be easy month.
Holy shit. Where is it available? It's on Shonen Jump, is it?
No.
Guess you're gonna have to come to my work and buy the physical copy.
Yeah, I own the physical copies. You buy them online digitally, or you can
You might find them on the streets. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. That'll be episode 8.
All of our listeners and viewers are resourceful people.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for watching. We're gonna read Parasite.
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna watch Parasite by Bong Joon-ho.
I'll probably have us watch the 2 live-action Parasite movies at the same time.
Oh God!
I've heard they're actually pretty decent.
I thought you were talking about like that Parasite, and then like
There's 2.
there's a lot of movies called Parasite.
Yeah, there's the Charles Band one as well.
Yes, that's the one I thought you were talking about. When you said 2 live action Parasite movies, I was like,
Oh
All
God, no!
Goodbye.
No.